7 reasons why he doesn't want my V*G*, nah after 60. I never imagined that the man who once held my face like it was the most delicate thing in the world, the man who looked at me like I was his safe place, would one day stop wanting me. Not just in the way lovers do, but in the way people need each other to feel seen. For years, I thought I was keeping love alive with my words, my body, my control. I believed if I gave enough, if I managed everything, if I shaped him into the version I thought he should be, he'd love me harder for it. But now, sitting here with the echo of his absence louder than any goodbye, I understand. He didn't leave because I wasn't enough. He left because I was too much of the wrong things. This isn't a story about a love that faded. It's a story about how easily desire, respect, and emotional connection can be destroyed when you forget that love doesn't grow where it can't breathe. Before we get started, I'd love it if you'd give this video a like. It helps me keep sharing important lessons. If you're not already subscribed, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on new videos. Also, if you like this video, write a 1 in the comments and a 0 if you don't, so I know what can be improved. So, here we go. 1. I smothered him with controlling care. Looking back, I told myself it was love. That my constant input, suggestions, and reminders were acts of devotion. That by managing his schedule, correcting his habits, and choosing his clothes, I was taking care of him. But the truth? I wasn't caring. I was controlling. And slowly, without even noticing, I became more like a manager than a wife. At first, he tolerated it with quiet patience. He'd laugh when I insisted he wear the blue shirt instead of the beige one. He'd nod along when I gave him unsolicited advice about how to speak in meetings or which friends were worth his time. But that laugh became thinner with time. That nod started to feel empty. I thought I was helping, but in reality, I was sending a message. I don't trust you to handle your own life. I micromanaged his choices out of fear. Fear of him drifting, fear of losing influence, fear that without my guidance, things would fall apart. But love rooted in fear doesn't blossom. It binds. It suffocates. He started pulling back, bit by bit. He stopped making plans on his own because he knew I'd rearrange them. He stopped buying me small gifts or surprising me, because I'd likely criticize the choice. He stopped speaking up in disagreements, not because he agreed, but because he knew I'd wear him down. At one point, I realized he was asking me permission for things no grown man should need permission for. Should I call Tom about that fishing trip? Do you think I should wear this to dinner? Is it okay if I read in the den instead of watching that show with you? I thought I was being involved. But what I had really done was make him feel like a child in his own relationship. And in doing so, I stripped him of his confidence. Not just as a husband, but as a man. When a man feels like he's constantly being watched, corrected, and redirected, he stops trying. He doesn't grow closer, he retreats. He starts guarding his thoughts, silencing his instincts, and eventually, he forgets who he is outside of you. And that's what happened to my husband. The man I once adored, the one full of ideas, conviction, energy, slowly disappeared. Not because he changed, but because he shrank inside the space I didn't allow him to grow. I told myself I was loving him well. But love, real love, doesn't control. It trusts. It gives room. It breathes. And I didn't let our love breathe until it was already gasping. 2. I used his age as a P*N. It started as teasing. Light-hearted jabs. Little comments I thought were funny. You're not as quick as you used to be. Need your reading glasses again, old man? Or when he forgot something simple. Well, that's what happens when you're pushing 70. I never meant to hurt him. Truly. I thought we were just being playful, that we could laugh about getting older together. But what felt like humor to me landed as humiliation to him. I didn't realize it at the time, but every joke was a chip away at his dignity. Every comparison I made between him and younger men, whether it was about energy, memory, or desire, was a message. You're not enough anymore. He stopped smiling when I made those comments. At first, he brushed them off, but slowly, I noticed his eyes growing distant. He no longer reached for me when we passed each other in the hallway. He stopped sharing things about his day or expressing his thoughts openly. The spark, the one that made him look at me like I was the center of his world, started to fade. And I know now, it wasn't his age that changed him. It was how I made him feel about it. We live in a world that already tries to make older men feel invisible. I, his partner, should have been the one place where he felt strong, admired, wanted. But instead, I echoed the very voices that made him feel small. I turned the natural beautiful process of aging into a we*p*n. One that I wielded casually, without realizing I was cutting into his confidence every single time. You see, men don't always express pain in obvious ways. They don't cry, plead, or beg to be seen. They withdraw. They get quiet. They stop trying. And that's what happened. He stopped initiating anything between us. Conversations, plans, Macy. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't feel like he could win. He felt judged, measured, and always found lacking. And honestly, I can't blame him. A man's desire for a woman isn't just about attraction. It's about how she makes him feel. If she makes him feel capable, admired, powerful, he'll come alive in her presence. But if she makes him feel old, dismissed, or constantly compared, he'll shrink away from her, quietly, but completely. And that's exactly what he did. 3. I demanded more than I gave. In the beginning, I gave freely. My time, my laughter, my affection. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that love isn't something you just receive. It's something you reciprocate. I got used to being on the receiving end. He brought me coffee in the morning. He remembered my favorite songs. He rubbed my back when I complained about my day. He gave and gave and gave. And I, without meaning to, became a taker. Instead of gratitude, I responded with irritation. Instead of appreciation, I pointed out what he didn't do. If he brought home flowers, I'd say, "Why now? What did you do wrong?" If he made dinner, I'd notice what he forgot. "You didn't season it enough," I'd mumble, barely lifting my eyes from my phone. I demanded his attention, but when he gave it, I brushed it off. I craved emotional connection, but when he tried to open up, I criticized his timing, his tone, his delivery. I asked for more patience, more understanding, more effort, but I gave less and less in return. He would come toward me, open, eager, hoping, and I'd meet him with coldness. And slowly, something shifted. He began to pull away. Not out of anger, but exhaustion. Because the truth is, no one, no matter how loving, can keep pouring from a cup that's never refilled. A relationship doesn't starve all at once. It starves in small ways. A missed thank you. A dismissive shrug. A sigh when he's trying. A complaint instead of a compliment. He started to realize something painful. He wasn't in a partnership. He was in a performance. One where he was expected to always give more, emotionally, mentally, physically, while receiving less. And men feel that, even if they don't say it. He stopped trying to win me over. Stopped going the extra mile. Not because he stopped loving me, but because he stopped believing I saw value in what he gave. Eventually, the balance between us tipped too far. He became weary. And when a man gets tired of trying to please someone who never seems pleased, he doesn't yell. He doesn't slam doors. He just checks out. And that's what he did. Quietly. Completely. 4. I criticized his body and desires. There's a particular kind of wound that doesn't bleed, but scars deeply, when the person you long for makes you feel unwanted. I didn't mean to be cruel. At least, not at first. When he reached for me in the dark, I'd gently pull away. When he kissed my shoulder, I'd sigh, say I was tired. But tiredness turned into routine. And eventually, into resentment. He changed, of course. We both did. His body softened. His pace slowed. He didn't move the way he used to, didn't burn with urgency the way he once did. But instead of embracing the rhythm of growing older together, I judged him for it. I made comments, sharp little barbs masked as observations. You used to be more energetic. That's all you want now? You don't kiss me like you used to. Each time he tried to initiate something physical, I met him not with warmth, but with scrutiny. I saw his desire not as something sacred, but something to analyze, to critique, to dismiss. And eventually, he stopped reaching for me altogether. I thought I was being honest. But there's a line between honesty and humiliation, and I crossed it. A man's body is tied to how he feels as a man. His strength, his confidence, his ability to please you. It all lives inside his need to be wanted, not just accepted but desired. And when that part of him is met with ridicule, the damage is profound. He didn't argue. He didn't confront me. He just withdrew. No more soft touches in the kitchen. No more playful glances in passing. No more late-night whispers. There's a look a man gets when he realizes he's no longer safe in your arms. It's not anger, it's grief. And I saw that look far too many nights as he lay beside me, turned away, silent. He was still there. But something essential in him had left. And I've come to understand something. It's not age that K*LLS int* may see. It's rejection. Not just of the body, but of the desire behind it. And once a man feels rejected enough times, he stops trying to earn back what was never truly given. Not attention, but acceptance. 5. I turned int* Macy into manipulation. There was a time when our int* Macy felt effortless. When a simple glance could spark connection. When we craved each other not just out of desire, but out of love, safety, belonging. But somewhere along the way, I started using that closeness as leverage. It wasn't obvious at first. I'd pull away when I was upset, hold back when I didn't get my way. I told myself I was just not in the mood, or that he needed to learn to treat me better first. But the truth? I was withholding. Not out of self-respect, but out of strategy. I wanted him to work harder, to apologize, to feel my absence so deeply that he'd crawl back, eager to earn me again. At first, he tried. He brought me flowers, cooked dinner, sat next to me even when I turned away. He apologized, even when he wasn't sure what for. But love doesn't grow where it's *p*nized. And soon, he stopped trying. Not because he didn't care, but because he realized that int* Macy had become a transaction. If he did what I wanted, he earned affection. If he didn't, I made him feel punished, cold-shouldered, unworthy of closeness. It became a pattern, one I didn't even fully recognize until it was too late. I treated my affection like currency. And with every withheld touch, every calculated rejection, I devalued what we once had. int* Macy should be a sanctuary, a space where both people feel safe, seen, and desired. But I turned it into a game. One where only I could win. And in the end, we both lost. He stopped initiating. Not out of anger, but out of quiet defeat. The bedroom, once filled with whispers and laughter, turned into a place of silence and distance. And here's what I know now. When a man no longer feels wanted, physically, emotionally, he doesn't argue. He simply detaches. And when that detachment becomes habit, it's nearly impossible to reverse. I thought I was in control. But in trying to manipulate closeness, I destroyed connection. Because no one wants to earn what should be given freely. Not S**X. Not love. Not the right to feel wanted. 6. I disrespected his silence and his space. I used to think silence meant something was wrong. If he wasn't talking, I assumed he was upset. If he wanted to be alone, I took it personally. So I filled every quiet moment with noise. Questions. Instructions. Complaints. I followed him from room to room. What are you thinking about? Why are you so quiet? Are you mad at me? But he wasn't angry. He was just being. Some people need space to breathe, to think, to recalibrate, especially as they get older. And I didn't understand that. Worse, I didn't respect it. When he sat outside in the evening, I'd interrupt him. When he turned on the TV just to unwind, I'd start a conversation, often one laced with tension. When he retreated to the garage or the spare room, I'd follow, needing connection when all he needed was peace. I thought love meant constant closeness. But real love also means giving someone room to be themselves, without needing to narrate, explain, or perform. Over time, I became pressure, not presence. Instead of being the soft place he could rest, I became another demand on his attention. I didn't realize how deeply I was intruding until he stopped seeking time with me altogether. He began spending longer hours outside, staying up later, waking up earlier, always carving out time when I wasn't around. Not because he didn't love me, but because being around me felt exhausting. And here's what I know now. When a man no longer has space to simply exist in peace, he finds it somewhere else, even if that somewhere is distance inside his own mind. I didn't need to talk less. I needed to understand more. His silence wasn't rejection. His stillness wasn't laziness. It was his way of staying grounded. And I bulldozed through it. I confused attention with affection, noise with connection. But the man I loved needed quiet, solitude, room to be human. And I kept interrupting that with my own need to be reassured. In doing so, I didn't bring us closer. I just made him wish I wasn't always there. 7. I made him feel like a failure, not a man. There's a weight that builds in a man when he starts to feel like he can never get it right, no matter what he does. And I, his wife, his once greatest cheerleader, became his loudest critic. I told myself I was motivating him. You used to be more ambitious. Why don't you try harder? Other men your age are still working, still doing things. It wasn't constant yelling, it was death by 1,000 cuts. Little digs, subtle comparisons, lingering disappointment in my voice every time he didn't meet a standard I barely realized I'd created. I began to look at him not with admiration, but with measurement. Not "you're still the man I chose," but "you should be more." And that broke something in him. A man doesn't need to be perfect to feel strong. But he does need to feel respected. And I had stripped that from him. Slowly, carelessly. Every time I spoke to him like he was less, he believed it a little more. He stopped offering ideas, because I'd shoot them down. He stopped suggesting things, because I'd roll my eyes. He started avoiding conversations altogether, because deep down, I made him feel like he didn't matter. And when a man feels like he's no longer needed, no longer admired, no longer useful, his desire to connect, to love, to lead, fades. We think men are strong enough to handle anything. But even the strongest ones wither when they're never appreciated, only corrected. He wanted to feel capable. He wanted to feel like I trusted his judgment. He wanted to feel like I still saw him as a man. But I had made him feel like a burden. Like he was never enough. And worse, like he had nothing left to offer. When a man reaches that point, Macy isn't just lost, it becomes impossible. Because no man longs to touch the person who makes him feel like a failure. No man wants to be close to the one who constantly reminds him of everything he's not. I used my words not to build him, but to break him. And by the time I realized the damage I had done, he was already gone. Not physically, he still sat across the room. But emotionally, he was nowhere near me anymore. Conclusion. In the quiet that followed, I expected him to come back, to try, to argue, to fight for us. But he didn't. He simply stopped. He no longer chased my attention. No longer reacted to my moods. No longer tried to prove his worth. And for the first time in years, I saw something in him I hadn't seen in a long time. Peace. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was a soft stillness that said, I'm done trying to earn what should have been given freely. He reconnected with old friends. He spent hours walking, reading, smiling at small things. Things I had forgotten how to notice. He began to laugh again. Not the forced kind he gave me to keep the peace, but the real, deep laughter that comes from being at ease with yourself. And though I lived under the same roof, I was no longer a part of that ease. I had lost my place, not because he stopped loving me, but because I had made love too hard to reach. He chose dignity. He chose self-respect. He chose himself. And I don't blame him. Because love, real love, doesn't demand someone to prove themselves day after day. It honors. It sees. It values. I used to believe that youth held the key to desire, that control meant closeness, that being needed was the same as being loved. But I was wrong. Desire lives in respect. Closeness lives in trust. Love lives in freedom. And when a man feels disrespected, rejected, and unseen for too long, he doesn't fall out of love. He just stops offering it. His journey away from me taught me the very lesson I refused to learn in time. You don't hold on to someone by gripping tighter. You hold on to them by giving them the space to want to stay. And though I lost him, I hope you don't have to. Because sometimes, the greatest act of love is learning how not to kill it with your own hands.